This is the Team Objection podcast for June 17th, 2021, episode 487. If you're watching on YouTube and the rundown on the right-hand side looks familiar, it's because it's essentially the same as last week's show. It's half E3, half the Suns, except E3 is over and the Nuggets are over, so we can talk about it with the benefit of some new perspective. But we're going to start with E3 first because that was the promise I made last week. We're not going to go straight into the Suns until they win a title. And so we're going to do that first.
I have breaking news, though.
Oh.
Dave, I've been playing Returnal nonstop. I will answer all your questions now.
One? What is it? Two?
Returnal. So I got a PS5. I have a PS5. Chris was nice enough to let me take the PS5 that was kind of up for grabs from an anti-scalper that helped us out. So have a PS5, playing Returnal. It's like Dark Souls, but harder. It's real. So it's a shooter. It's 3D, but it's like a bullet hell game. So it's just the screen is just constantly filled with projectiles coming at you.
Why is that fun?
Because it's exhilarating. It's thrilling. So you each time I beat a boss, I just collapse and it takes deep breaths.
It sounds like it would be something that you would hide for 90% of the game and then get your lucky shot in because there's so much stuff. So it doesn't sound exhilarating. It sounds like I'd want to throw my controller through the...
No, it's actually you spend the whole time building stuff up. So each run is a different build because it's randomized in this type of game. And so you actually it's kind of like a long sort of grind actually, even though it seems like it'd be really fast and I don't know, reactionary. It is that too, but you kind of get to see your hard work pay off. You can make shortcuts that get you to the bosses faster, but then you have to balance I don't have as much stuff yet. So do I try it shorthanded but save myself, 2 hours? Or do I spend 2 hours building up and then get really devastated if I die at the end anyways?
Yeah, that sounds like I throw my controller through the TV.
Oh, and there is still an anger component. Don't get it twisted. I mean, earlier today I was on a conference call and there was an F word that was so loud that the nearby pigeons all flew away into space.
That was...
But my line was muted because, that's the polite thing to do on a Zoom call.
Yeah.
So
the problem is, if I die in a boss, that's fine. I expect that. If I get ambushed in a regular fucking room and I die in the room, that really makes me mad.
It's good to know Shaun has a job and doesn't just sit down and play video games all day.
Dude.
There you go.
I get to take advantage of my lunch breaks, okay? And that is dedicated PS5 time.
So, E3. A couple of things we're going to talk about today, but primarily we might as well be as timely as possible, at least for us. As usual, we're recording this on a Tuesday, so the big news of today was Nintendo Direct was this morning, basically closing out E3, even though they're not directly connected. It was still kind of like the capper, the thing that people were maybe most excited for. It's hard to say. Obviously, each console has their own supporters, but there was a lot of hype coming into this because the expectation was that there would be Metroid Prime 4 news, Breath of the Wild 2 news, maybe more about Pokemon, some of the big heavy hitters of the industry. We got some of that, so let's talk about Nintendo Direct. What was it that really stood out for you out of the whole 40-minute presentation?
Well, I will start it with the thing that I know the most about, and that's the Legend of Zelda trailer, because that's probably the big news out of everything, as evidenced by Chris's shirt. Yeah, you had to check it. I think it's going to be really interesting how this game fits into the timeline, Shaun's favorite topic. I'm getting everybody involved here. Because the timeline has Skyward Sword as the beginning of Hyrule. Breath of the Wild was the oldest in the timeline, the 10,000 years later. And it looks like we're almost returning to the Sky World from Skyward Sword in Breath of the Wild. So it looks like there's going to be some sort of cross here, which is my speculation, but it looks kind of awesome if they're able to kind of mix that.
I think your speculation is wrong. I think it's a direct sequel, but with some elements of some more verticality like they did with Skyward Sword, but not now in the Skyward Sword timeline.
Well, it's not. Well, I mean, it's all one timeline that was fractured and apparently brought back together if you follow the newest theories. But it could be like you find the ancient world of the Skyland, whatever that was called, which I can't remember because I only played Skyward Sword once. Skyloft. Damn it. I only played it once. I can't remember. That's what it looks like to me, at least. I thought that was kind of cool, at least. So it was like left a lot of questions, left a lot of speculation off a 1.5 minute trailer, but that's what they do.
I do think there might be something to it. I'm not saying the two are going to be like directly connected in the timeline, but it does look a lot like Skyward Sword, and it makes you wonder, is there a reason why they delayed putting out the HD version of Skyward Sword until closer to this? Could be coincidence, could be nothing. I will say there are a couple other hints to a time control-esque mechanic in that trailer, to where it could just be beyond story mechanics. It also could have a gameplay element, could be one or the other or both. It's interesting. I mean, there's a lot to decompress in what was basically only a 90-second trailer, but that's one of the things that Nintendo does best. It's kind of the same thing with their Smash reveals, where they cram a lot into like a 2-3 minute deal, and you can be like, oh, if you look at this frame, there's an alternate costume there, and in this frame, this is like a special move. They do a really good job at that. And so I saw people complaining in the chat. Okay, first of all, I made the mistake of being in the chat this morning while it was airing. I was watching live. But people were like, I can't believe they're going to end it on like, it was what, the expansion pass for Hyrule Warriors 2. Everybody's like, that's it? It's like, no, stupid. They're not going to end their entire thing on that. Of course they have something bigger up their sleeve. And by the end, people seem generally satisfied with the whole presentation, you know?
The idea of complaining about a show that you're just watching because it didn't fit your expectations is funny to me. Also, what are they going to do? Show the Breath of the Wild trailer first thing so everyone just leaves? Come on. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, they opened with a Smash reveal, which is one of the bigger things people were looking forward to, because it had been 3 months, so they knew one was coming. And they closed with the biggest game that they have coming.
But not the most exciting reveal.
Nope.
Which is?
It's Metroid Dread by a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Because it looks slick as hell. And I mean, even like a little detail of them doing like the screen and calling it Metroid 5. It's like, it's just that little extra of like, yeah, this is official. They're giving it attention. It's going to be really good. I am so excited. It's like Apple meets like Metroid. A lot of the aesthetics are stuff. It's never been like, I wouldn't say gritty, but not that like immaculate futurized kind of like, you know what I mean? You know what I'm getting at here, right? The robot with the white and the red. Very interesting aesthetic for a series that's never really gone there before.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how it feels when you play it. I watched a little bit of the Treehouse after the Direct where they had a bit more gameplay footage and whatnot. It looks pretty solid. Conceptually, I love the idea because we've talked about what makes Fusion one of the most beloved games in the franchise, and one of that is like both story and that sense of being chased.
Yeah.
And when you're basically like nothing, you have like your basic suit and your basic weapons and everything else has been stripped from you, and you spend the first part of Fusion running away from stuff, and it's a really cool feeling that they managed to implement. This seems to be like that times 5. And if it's more of that type of experience, I'm here for it because that's the best way to make Samus vulnerable, not having her cowering in a corner crying every time Ridley's within 100 miles of her. Just to name another example that is not referencing anything in particular.
It looks, Chris, you're more in tune with Metroid than I am. It looks quite a bit faster. The gameplay looks faster than they've done in the past. And is that just it being in HD and on the Switch, or does it actually seem like they sped things up a bit?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think you can see some familiar elements from the last 2 3DS titles that they've had with like the melee attacks and that, where those making a return makes sense because they were implemented pretty well. I'd like to see them scaling back a little bit. But to that point, I mean, there are some familiar things that you can compare it with, and it seems like it is faster, yeah. And it shouldn't be like hyper speed. It's meant to be sort of like this careful platforming, exploring type game, but I think a little bit of an uptick will benefit it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually am watching the trailer, and it looks like it has a little bit of that. You can kick ass, but also you get chased a lot of it. So like the whole first 30 seconds is it basically Samus getting just wrecked by a big robot. So it looks like you're going to build your way through, is based on the trailer that I can see.
And I think it'll be good if it's actually a core gameplay mechanic. It was important in Fusion, but only showed up a handful of times. And even towards the end of that shortened stretch, you had enough health and at least enough like flexibility to where you weren't super concerned. It was still kind of like nerve-wracking every time the SAX showed up, but you weren't, you didn't feel helpless. Here, it looks like you might be helpless for quite some time. And the ultimate payoff of that is A, you have a longer stretch of having to feel like freaked out every time one of these shows up, and B, you still get to blast the shit out of them at the end of the game because you have some big weapon upgrade. I feel like it's going to be a really, really cool balance.
I just love like that. So to kind of bring it back full circle, because I knew we were going here eventually. Dave, Returnal is I'm playing Returnal. I'm like, this is a lot of like Metroid. This almost feels like a Metroid sequel to me. There's even like a grappling hook. There's that a Metroid sense of progression where you see something, you can't do anything with it yet, but you got to go find the weapon and then you can come back. And so to have a new Metroid title announced at the exact same, like, I don't know, 3 days that I started this game, was pretty cool. And I think it even makes me more excited than I would have been otherwise.
Makes sense. You already got that feel for it.
Yeah.
So that was a big takeaway for me, especially because it was somewhat unexpected. Dread is a game that was announced as being in development back in the late 2000s and then disappeared for about a decade and all of a sudden reappears, which is cool. But yeah, that was neat because they were like, Metroid Prime 4, we're still working on it. Sorry, give us some more time. And they dropped that instead. So everybody goes, oh, okay. And obviously for me, being the 2D Metroid fan, that was almost a better thing in a way.
I kind of agree too. And that's what we've been wanting is like a 3D game, or a 2D side-scroller game, but like with the attention of like next gen, not just ported to the 3DS. And it's funny you mentioned Dread, because I had that thought of like, wasn't this a game that was like almost a legendary status, like to the point of were they ever really working on it? Actually, it's a name that's kind of been infamous. So I thought it was really cool that they could have changed it, but they're like, no, you know what? We know that fans know of this name, and we're going to call it the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. And it's going to match the core component of our game, so all the better, right?
Yeah. So that was cool. I mean, there's I'm Mario Golf I'm excited for. There's a new Mario Party game that seems to be like a best of compilation.
Mm-hmm.
They're bringing back the Nintendo 64 maps, which I think is great.
Well, it's kind of weird seeing some of those mini games pop up because I played those Mario Parties more than any other.
Yeah.
I think 2 and 3 are the ones I played the most, and some of those popped up in the trailer, and I was like, oh my god, I remember that from like a long time ago.
And they said they said 6 maps are coming from the original Nintendo 64 one, and I assume that means that that's only some of what is going to be much more. Even if it was those 6, that would be more maps than was in the newest Mario Party that came out.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes me really happy to see.
And WarioWare, like, I don't know if you ever played that, but it's actually relatively fun, as stupid as it is.
There are people that love that series, and since I was in the chat room, that was maybe the one they were the most excited about. Now, granted, they're garbage people with garbage taste, but still, that was one where it was like, oh shit, like that looks cool, and there was like a reference to the Fire Emblem tea parties that you could do in the game with your, like, there's all sorts of just, that's
funny.
Classic WarioWare, which is being like totally off the wall, on the nose, goofy, and has a co-op element, so that's one more thing that might get me to dip my toes into it for the first time.
There's something so satisfying about the short games that are like increasingly frustrating but possible to do at the same time.
Yeah.
I think that's why I'm excited for Mario Golf. I actually pre-ordered it after the Direct, and I'm not sure what changed about it. I watched a little bit of footage in the Treehouse as well. They showed off some of the gameplay, and I'm not sure what was different about that compared to the trailers, but I was finally like, you know what? Yeah, I do want this. And it's not as fast as WarioWare. I mean, that's 10-second mini games, but it's that same idea where I can probably play around in Mario Golf in 10 minutes. You would imagine it's pretty fast, pretty arcadey. I like having some, not all, some games that are really quick gameplay loops like that. So I'm excited. I pre-ordered that now too.
Well, and I like games that, especially on the Switch, because I use it portable so much that I can kind of play and be on vacation and be with you guys and watching Deal or No Deal or whatever, and like I don't have to be reading like in Phoenix Wright where I actually have to be paying attention. It's like Pokemon Snap, perfect example. I just kind of like doing a thing. It's very casual, and I like games like that sometimes. So, Dave, I asked Chris the other day, like, hey, are you guys getting Mario Golf? And he was like, are you fucking serious? Shut up, you idiot. And now he's getting it. So
he's converted that quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, he called me things I can't even repeat on the radio, and now he's pre-ordering it. So now we just gotta get Cody to do it, and we'll be set. I was more excited to see that basic golf is in there? Like
Yeah.
they had a standard mode?
That
Because
might
I was
be-
unclear on that.
That might be what it was, because I know there's the battle golf, which I'm about, the speed golf, which I think is interesting looking,
Yeah.
the taking me into like a story mode thing, which I was interested in, but knowing that there's probably going to be this regular gameplay progression too, that was like I think the last thing where I was like, okay, like I'm on board now, sure.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that was in one of the earlier trailers. It just wasn't focused on very much because they're showing off like the new stuff.
They never like strictly said there's also a way to just play normal golf. So yeah, I was excited about that. Other than that, I mean, I thought it was a solid show. Like you got 2 core entries coming out, a lot of like kind of fun side stuff. Like you can always complain there was no Mario or like Pokemon, but we got a lot of cool stuff.
I mean,
So-
two of the 3 biggest franchises in Nintendo. I mean, Zelda, Mario, and Metroid are the biggest franchises, I'd say, and you got 2 of them.
I guess if I have to lament something, and I'm not really, I'm happy with it. My biggest hope would have been a new Fire Emblem game. They've talked about a sequel to Three Houses. They've talked about finally redoing the genealogy of the Holy War game, that being like the next update they were going to do. I kind of had my fingers crossed. Nothing showed up, and that's okay. It'll come out when it comes out.
I don't really have any huge disappointments. I wouldn't have minded a Mario Odyssey 2. We talked about that. I wouldn't have minded if we actually had gotten Metroid Prime 4 details, but I'm ecstatic about Dread instead.
Yeah.
I was just generally pleased because it felt like it ticked a lot of boxes for different people. I mean, we mentioned like WarioWare is not something that me and Shaun are super into, but I'm glad there's a new game for that. I like that Advance Wars is coming back. I like that Super Monkey Ball is coming back, which is a series I don't give a shit about, but it looks fun, and I think people are excited about that. We talked before E3 about it being the right call if they're going to do some more re-releases and remakes, and that seems to be, at least in part, the direction they're going, which, if that's what it takes in the pandemic times, fine, because they had so many more games that people were interested in that than other companies did in their E3, which we're going to get to momentarily, because, boy, not everybody else delivered. So I would give it like a solid BB+. I didn't go in with super high expectations, and they exceeded them.
Yeah, I would maybe even say A-. Like,
Maybe.
it was solid, but then getting Breath of the Wild 2, Metroid Dread, like those are huge games. So that was pretty good.
And Dave didn't see the
Dave
whole
is
thing, so he can't
abstaining
grade it.
from giving a score.
I'm abstaining with not enough evidence on my part
Okay,
because
sure.
I don't know enough.
That's fair. So then, before Tuesday, there was a whole other weekend basically chock full of events, and by and large, nobody seemed super excited about them. There were certainly a few standouts. There were some games that were announced that were, generating excitement, but I also saw that 2 or 3 of the developer conferences were just widely panned for various reasons. We talked last week about not exactly expecting the moon here, but it seems like we were firmly planted on the ground for most of E3. So was there anything else besides Nintendo's conference that made you go like, okay, wow, like I'm excited about that?
Well, wasn't Halo? I feel like Halo was announced for this year now, for sure. Maybe that's a different game. That's a bad sign.
Halo talked about.
Yeah, there's a little bit of Halo. I know. I think they showed off the multiplayer, which for most people, that's great news. I personally don't really care. Probably my biggest game was probably 2, and it shows you how far I've come. Where years ago, had a Dark Souls been announced, I would not give a shit. Now we have Elden Ring, which I think looks really cool. It's basically Dark Souls, the I forget what that guy's name is, who does all the Dark Souls games, but mixed with George Martin doing like the legends and the lore behind it. Looks really cool. And then in the same vein, Final Fantasy Origins, which is just like Dark Souls, allegedly, meets Final Fantasy, which I'm like, sign me up. That's great. And I appreciate them making it like a side sort of spin-off game and not like Final Fantasy 16 or 17 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not one in the series, essentially.
Yeah.
I wish I had something that jumped out at me, but I don't. So
okay. Well, then you can be quiet in the back.
I'll be silent.
I am sort of excited by Final Fantasy Origins and sort of not, and there's a couple reasons for that. I mean, Team Ninja does action well. So that seems like that's a good pedigree for backing an action game like that. I'm excited about that aspect.
You didn't like the broken demo?
Broken demo, certainly not the most promising sign. Where you're like, hey, we're going to drop this, and people are already kind of like, I don't know about this, and then they can't even try your demo. Because they even, I think, maybe it was just on social media, but I'm pretty sure one of the developers or somebody connected to the project was like, hey, the screenshots don't really do it justice. When you get your hands on the demo, you're going to see like what this is about, and then nobody could get their hands on the demo. So it was like, like pull your shirt collar kind of stuff. And also, like, have we forgotten that there can be female characters in Final Fantasy? Are we just going to go ahead and say fuck off female protagonists in 2021? Is that what we're doing?
Well,
because like while Luna Freya is a cool character in 15, she's what, the only important female character?
Yeah, and she's not even really. You could argue if you look at all the side stories, it almost makes her a character. If you don't have the side story, she's barely in the game at all. You can get away with it. Well, according to some people, you can't get away with it at all. Personally, I think they set out, they told the story they wanted to tell. Brotherhood, fine.
Yeah.
But now we've had 2 other games with nary a female, is what it's looking like. So that's a little weird to me.
From the same developer that also brought us a Kingdom Hearts franchise where female characters were few and far between.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, so is this just a Square Enix thing? Like, what are we? And yeah, well, what about Lightning? I don't care about Lightning. Okay, so let's just be very clear about that. So I don't know. That was just one thing that stuck out to me. It's like, hey, here's these 3 dude bros, and I'm like, okay, so this is what we're doing again?
Yeah.
It seems like a different direction to go in 2021, where they're kind of zigging when everyone else is zagging in a way. Like everyone's moving towards this more inclusive cast, and it's like, nah, move it the other way.
Well, and then you have Nier, where there are women in it, but they're always in various states of undress. So, yeah, it's interesting. And that's another Square Enix thing. Interesting place for them right now.
Yeah. And as much as I enjoy Final Fantasy XIV, it is definitely pandered to fan service on both sides, to be fair. But, as with a lot of things that come out of Japan, more female than male. So, that was my main takeaway from Origins. I was like, I wish the demo was better. And at least on the surface, I'm like, yeah, 3 male protagonists again. That's what we're doing? Okay.
And other things in E3, they didn't have... Apart from Halo, yeah, there wasn't a big announcement for any of the series that everybody was hoping for. Elder Scrolls, there was nothing for that. There was no, any sort of Rockstar games, anything like that. So no even hints as far as I saw from it. So
I mean, there's they hinted so Starfield, if that has entered your radar, some people are pretty excited about that. That was
going to be mine that I brought up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, go ahead and take it away. You probably to say.
I feel like Todd Howard's vision for games lines up with what I like in a lot of cases, and Skyrim is a big-time example of that. So if we're going to do a game of that ilk in space, to me, I'm like, okay, at the very least, I'm cautiously interested. Am I interested enough to get an Xbox for it? I mean, probably not, especially because we know it'll end up on the other systems within a year or two, most likely. But that was the one game that I had not heard of coming into this, where I was like, okay, that's a new title that I'm interested in that I wasn't before.
I want it to be more like Mass Effect than No Man's Sky. If
Yeah.
that makes sense. Those are, man, if you hit me on the wrong sci-fi, I am completely disinterested. So yeah, here's hoping that it sort of is the type that I enjoy.
You're selling me on sci-fi because I have to be the opposite of Shaun. So
Yeah, you're like, if it's more like No Man's Sky or like Star Trek, I'm actually more interested.
Exactly. I mean, if you're going to tell me it's like an Elder Scrolls game, which I've always been interested in, and it's a sci-fi one, you might have me here, but I don't think I'm buying an Xbox for it, unfortunately.
But let me ask you this, because to me, Mass Effect was like not that area. But I wonder if to you it kind of is that area. I wonder if Mass Effect is just like the perfect sci-fi title for like accessibility for everyone.
It was, in the sense of, it was very character driven. It was a sci-fi setting, which appeals to some people in the futuristic world where you mix with aliens and have fast and light travel and all this cool futuristic stuff. But also it focused on a lot of RPG. You had to level up your weapons, level up your teammates, build a party, stuff like that. So it did kind of have a mix of both.
Maybe I just like space magic. Maybe that's my really complex take on sci-fi. Star Wars, Mass Effect, space magic, I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
So there is something fun about sci-fi when you have some sort of bit of science to it. And it's not science fantasy, it's more science fiction. I mean, Star Wars is not at all science fiction, really. It's more of a fantasy type of thing. But
Yeah, that's true.
even so, Star Trek is still pretty much science fantasy with some of the stuff they do on there. But at least they try to root it in science a little bit. So there's something kind of fun about that where it's like, we're going to try to explain this as best we can. We're going to come up with wonky stuff to explain it, but we're going to try.
There wasn't a whole lot else that really caught my eye, I'll be honest. I did think Elden Ring looked interesting. That was one more that stuck out. Halo Infinite, as a guy who liked Halo games and hasn't played one in about 8 years, still got my interest of like, that would be cool to get into at some point. And then beyond that, I looked at the rest of the list and I was like, I don't know about this. You'd think I would be excited because we have about 6 different Left 4 Dead clones coming out between now and spring 2022.
What's that one called? It's like starts with an A.
Which one?
God, what the one that's like a weird name, because there's Back for Blood. That
Back
one
for
I
Blood.
know. But there's another one where it's like almost like you're in the 60s and it's sort of like sci-fi tech.
I'll look it up.
Oh, it was funny. While you're looking it up, I read in the comments, Dave. First comment, and I scrolled down just to see. Wow, it's so diverse, sarcastically, in the comments, because there's like, I don't know, one of every race on the main character. When I looked at that, I was like, oh, cool, like nice representation. First comment, deriding the representation. You're like, awesome, this is good. This is the state of affairs in the world today.
Yeah.
No, because everyone's got to be polarized.
The Anacrusis.
Anacrusis. I wanted to say something like Acusa or something.
Close enough.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's Back for Blood. There is Redfall, which I'm at least somewhat interested
the
in.
The vampire one.
Yeah, that one I think we haven't seen any gameplay yet, but I'm at least intrigued by that one more than the other ones. I mean, Back for Blood is clearly just like half of Turtle Rock from Left 4 Dead being like, okay, we can't make Left 4 Dead anymore because we're not with Valve, but we're gonna make Left 4 Dead.
Yeah.
So I'm interested. There was a couple more that were announced. There's an Aliens one. There's a Warhammer one, and I'm forgetting what else. But I should be excited, and instead I'm kind of like, eh?
I might have the highest. So, but is Redfall? I think that's what you said. Is that like the same like 4-player co-op kind of like surviving through the level?
Yeah, and they're all supposed to have their own spin on what was it? There's a name for it, but the thing that like dictated the AI's script and was adaptive, so that like it decided what enemies it threw at you. They're all supposed to have some familiar thing like that, to where no 2 playthroughs are the same, and it scales the difficulty depending on how you're doing, that kind of stuff.
Well, I think Redfall is Arcane, right? So like the same people, Deathloop, and which is another game I'm excited for. It wasn't E3. And Dishonored. Games I think you might like, Dave, for the record, at some point.
Yeah, I think Dishonored actually would be a pretty good fit for him, but there's been other stuff that we needed to get him to play first.
Yeah, it's lower on the list, but...
So, I mean, that's about it for me. I don't have anything. I didn't go into this being like, oh, I'm going to be blown away by a ton of announcements, but I am a little bit sad that at least there's nothing really from any of my big series that I enjoy. Maybe it's just a timing thing, like I didn't really think we'd get a P6, Persona 6, and I didn't really expect to get anything on Elder Scrolls 6, and we are still about to get a new Tales game, so that's not going to be here. There's, franchises I was expecting not to see and didn't see, but I'm still a little sad.
Yeah, it was okay. There was nothing even really that was like a Horizon Zero Dawn where it's a new IP and it takes the stage and it wows everybody. I didn't really get that. There was no game that just like stood out that was like pretty far along to where they could show stuff like that. It was just, here's some stuff that's coming. Bethesda soon is going to announce a lot of stuff, and you're like, so now we're using E3 to announce an announcement?
Yep.
That's weird.
Nothing like announcing future announcements.
Yeah. It's like it's like the
later.
teaser for trailers now. That is a thing. And I'm like, I love trailers. Can we please not continue this teasers thing? It's really stupid.
Alrighty, so I have no segue for this, so fuck it. One of the things that we care about a lot besides video games is the Suns, and as I talked to a couple people in the comments about this in the Denver series, but Denver's gone. They got swept. The Suns are in the Western Conference Finals. They're awaiting the winner of the Clippers-Utah series, which even by tonight, when this episode airs, will not be known. Game 6 will be Friday, I believe. So we have a ways to go before the Suns are going to play again. I would imagine probably Monday earliest at this point, which will be a full week and change after they closed out the Nuggets. We swept them. They were without Jamal Murray. They were only partially with Will Barton, who played well when he was there on a minutes restriction, and they talked a lot about Dozier being hurt, and I don't give a shit about Dozier, but not a hold in the Denver team. But nonetheless, we played the opponent in front of us and beat the shit out of them. So does that give you any renewed confidence, increased confidence going forward, or were you just like, that was business as it was supposed to be taken care of?
Well, it's kind of funny. I was thinking there was a golden opportunity to name it chicken, like the chicken, the vegan, because you're expecting like real quality, and what you get is like a bunch of fake bullshit that has no substance. And I thought that really would have been the way to describe the Nuggets. They were hurt. I'm not saying it, they had a good season. They really did. They were on fumes. They were running on fumes at this point. I don't know what to take from this. On one hand, a lot of people still, even with the injuries, took them in 7. So to them, I'm like, what were you thinking? But then at the same time, like they were like, this is what we should have done. And maybe that means I am more confident now, but this is not a good team. They were banged up. It makes me realize how much better we are than Portland as well. And it's like, I'm glad we took care of business. We didn't really show any huge lapses. We got it done so we could get rest and await our next challenger. But, I haven't felt this in all of the Suns runs in, I'm sure you want to talk, Dave. Sorry, just give me a second. In all the Suns runs in the Nash era, there was always a series where I was like, okay, but we haven't conquered like the biggest challenge yet. And there was apprehensive coming, whether it was San Antonio or, after we got through them, there's like, okay, but LA is now the big beast. It's like, we're kind of through that. We have the Nets, but like, if we make it to the finals, I would almost consider that like the finals has not felt as tangible to me, maybe ever in being a Suns fan as they do right now.
So the word you were looking for that you stole from me and my point from our group text chat was boogeyman. There's no boogeyman out there for us anymore.
Yeah.
We already knocked them out. So yeah, in the past, even the the Nash Suns in the mid 2000s, we were like, well, the Spurs are coming. Like, we know we're going to face them eventually. And then later on, it was, okay, the Lakers and Kobe are there. That whole time through the 2000s, there was always that last hurdle. They're like, we just got to get past them. And we never could. But we got to face our hurdle, which turned out to be kind of a paper tiger, but we got to face them right away and kick their ass right away. So then we come to a hobbling team like Denver, and the two main things I took away from it was, one, Chris Paul is back, like he's healthy. 2, DeAndre Ayton should not be messed with defensively. I mean, I know that Jokic didn't have his full supporting cast around him, but despite the fact Jokic had good stats, DeAndre shut him down for the most part. I mean, as much as you can shut down who is an MVP.
Well, everybody was like, Jokic is back. It was like game 3, maybe.
Yeah.
It's easy to remember because there's only 4 of them. And he put up numbers, but I remember thinking like, this is not like, it's not as effective as he normally is. And like just the eye test, he's not making an imprint on this game.
He had the statistical anomaly of a 30-20-10 game in game 3. And I don't think he played that well, as much as you can say that in it, because he took 29 shots to get those 30 points, I believe. Every game, he had to take a high number of shots to get his points, which is the best thing you can have for a center like that, who generally is relatively efficient and shoots on a good percentage and gets high points and assist numbers. He never had that, and part of that was to his team that couldn't shoot. I mean, Austin Rivers and Facu Campazzo was terrible.
Yeah.
Were terrible shooters the whole game. They weren't a starting backcourt, and we took advantage of it. And the big bugaboo we had all season was that we played down to the level of our opponent. We'd come up and beat the Lakers. We'd come up and beat the Bucks during the regular season. And then we would falter against the Thunder or the Magic or something like that. It's like, how are we losing to these garbage teams? And now we're like, okay, this team's hurt. We should take care of them. We blow them out in game 1. Okay, here's the letdown game. We blow them out in game 2. All right, game 3, Jokic is back home. He's getting his MVP trophy.
That was the one for me.
Yeah.
And then we blew them out again.
We just blew them out again. And then finally, game 4, when their backs against the wall and they're scratching Claude like a caged animal, okay, they put up a bit of fight after Jokic was kicked out of the game. So all in all, like, we showed that we have the resilience. Chris Paul is just showing his leadership ability on and off the court, I believe. Monty Williams is just making me want to give the man a hug just all the time. I mean, there is so much wholesomeness coming from this team in a way that I haven't felt since 2010. Like, I loved that 2010 team, and I might love this team more because of just how selflessly they play on the court, how good of guys they seem to be overall. Just everything about it, I love it.
It wasn't just that it was a sweep. It was that it was methodical. It was surgical. It was precise. I mean, I can't imagine. I didn't look up this stat. I was thinking about it earlier today, and I forgot to check. But Denver couldn't have led more than like 10 minutes of the games in total in that series.
I think in the final 3 games, because game 1 was close until it wasn't. I think it was the final 3 games they led for a total of 1 minute and 31 seconds in the final 3 games.
And so, and you know, you're always going to have that. Well, like they led 2-0, and then so the Suns didn't lead wire to wire, but they might as well have, right? They did actually in one of the 4 games. It was the fact that yes, a wounded team, not 100%, deserves respect for even making it this far. Portland sucks clearly, right? All those things are true, and good on Jokic for even getting his team a series win. But to your guys' point, Ayton didn't shut him down, but he guarded him one-on-one effectively, and that takes away Jokic's primary ability, which is his passing.
Almost everything was hard.
Yep.
For him.
And that specifically when he was guarded by Ayton. His field goal percentage dropped significantly when it was Ayton covering him and not either open looks in transition or off switches, you know. Because Jay Crowder's a fighter, but he can't guard Nikola Jokic. Very few people can, but Ayton is one of them, clearly. And they even talked about that before the series. Jokic gave Ayton his flowers and vice versa. Of like, yeah, like this dude's really good. Yeah, I love playing against him. Like, which was really cool. And while I put chicken nuggets because of the Jokic just getting ejected in Game 4 for slapping down on a tiny man like a giant baby, I didn't actually have any ill will towards the Nuggets going into this series or coming out of it. I like their franchise. Jokic is cool. He even apologized to Cameron Payne. All of this is to say, my takeaway from this, I think we might be the favorite to win the title. And that is a really, really weird thing to say because, as you guys alluded to, I did not think that even when our team was at its peak in the mid-2000s. I always thought, oh, God, Dallas is looming. They've always played us tough. We can't really guard Dirk like Shaun Marion tries, but nobody can guard Dirk. Or the Spurs, they're going to play us physical, and our big weakness is we can't defend that well, so when they slow us down to the half court, it's going to be a grind. There is no team left, including the Nets, because of their health issues, that I don't look at and say we can beat them. Not that we will, or we should, but I look at every matchup that remains in front of us and I think we have the tools to do it, and I think that starts with our defense.
Yes, it does.
Yes. I was telling Maisie, because it's funny, all of media is like, oh, we're creating a new generation of Suns fans. And like, it's true. This house is an example. McGilla, she has a Suns shirt now. Maisie's watching. I was like, I cannot stress enough to you how pleasing it is to watch a game and be like, we can rely on our defense. If nothing else is going right, we will at least play defense well. And how different that is than everything in the Nash era, pretty much. Like, we would have some good individual defenders. We would just bleed points. And it was like, if we couldn't score on a night, it was so frustrating to watch. Like, all we need is one stop. And they would go 8, 9, 10 possessions, scoring every time. And I just want to rip my hair out. And now it's like, the blowouts, our offense is clicking, but it starts on the defensive end. Absolutely.
And what about the juxtaposition of Denver was, in the sense of defensively, a lot like how he used to be. Chris Paul, his free throw line jumpers, where he made 6 in a row in the third quarter from almost the same spot repeatedly. That's how I feel it used to be back in the mid-2000s with the Suns. And to see it on the other side, where Chris Paul just was like, I'm going to get to this spot, and they do it 3 different ways, and he gets to the exact same spot, and hits the exact same shot again and again. I was cackling, just laughing in my seat, saying, like, how is this man doing this? Well, if I was a Denver fan, I'd be pulling my hair out, just be like, why can't we stop this?
Yeah, there's like, please guard him one time.
Yeah. Exactly.
And it's like, you know, and I mean, the truth is they were trying. I don't know if they have the personnel or the scheme, but, you know, we're that good, though. And if you were to not do like drop coverage, he's just going to find another open shooter. Our offense is so patient. And even when we don't score, most of the time we're like, oh, that was a good look. Mm-hmm. Like, we can live with that look. If it doesn't go down, like that, we did everything we could do to get a high percentage shot.
Good ball movement, unselfish plays. I mean, people had such an opinion of Booker the entire time as he's a ball hog, he's a shot chucker. He always looks for his own stats. Have you seen like he passes up good looks to get better looks constantly? He is buying into this team thing so much, and I love every bit of this team so much.
And I think we even asked the question back in the first month of the season, when he was putting up numbers but not as usual, like what's up with him? Does he not coexist with Chris Paul? And the truth is they were learning how to play together.
Yeah.
And when you look back at those numbers of the first month of the season compared to everything that happened after, it becomes very clear that they did it exactly the right way. They experimented with stuff. They messed around in the beginning of the season, to get a feel for each other so that it would pay dividends later. And to what you guys were mentioning too, it's such an aesthetically pleasing style on both sides of the floor. Because the Nash era was great. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, this is the best ever in Suns basketball. Because nothing really compares to the feel of that in the era it was in. There are other teams in the modern NBA that play like the Suns do. This isn't like we're a revelation. This is Monty Williams, a disciple of the Spurs, playing a very Spurs offensive style of play, right? But it is still beautiful to watch because, as you mentioned, even when the shots aren't falling, we're generally getting good looks. It's about passing. It's about quick decisions with the ball, movement, off-ball cutting, things that make it so fun to watch. And I'm so grateful that we're not watching an ISO-heavy style like the Clippers.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and it's funny because I was about to say, look at remember 8 years ago where it was the Morris brothers just passing to each other, basically jacking up a contested shot after like wasting the entire shot clock, and now Marcus is still kind of doing that on the Clippers along with the whole team. Kawhi is an amazing talent; he gets to his spots, he's incredible, but it's not because he back cuts and they hit him for what he just does it himself. It's all ISO ball. That's the whole thing.
He's a robot that just does what he's designed to do, kind of. I mean, that's what he's designed to do, and that's what he does.
I'm hoping that our defense. I still got to think the Clippers are the one coming out of that series. I might be wrong, and that this could be my fear.
Let's go this. Who do you want? Who do you want to face in the West?
I want Utah.
I think I want Utah still.
I know. Be careful what you wish for. The only caveat is, sounds like Conley's going to play in Game 5, which I think is going to make a big-time difference.
I feel like I kind of want the Clippers for the home court advantage, which may or may not play into it. But the fact is, Utah's home court advantage has been not as good as ours, but similar in the sense they have a full arena, full capacity. We've already seen how LA's capacity is, and that's not their fault. It just is. And so the fact if we can jump out to a series lead, not that has necessarily mattered against the Clippers these past two series, but it could fuel us in a way that if we fall down to Utah because of their home court advantage, I don't know how we're going to respond to it. I think we're going to respond well. We've been a good road team the whole year.
I think so. Yeah, exactly. We've been a good road team.
I mean, it's kind of 6 or half dozen. It's kind of like whoever comes out of it. I hope it just goes 7 and they beat the crap out of each other.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely what I hope. I hope it goes the distance. And it's funny because it's like I want the one who's going to lose the series. Doesn't work that way, but whoever's playing worse, I want to see that team. But I mean, they're two really good teams, and again, there's no guarantee that we're gonna beat whoever comes out. But like after what we did to Denver, like what do you call? It's like a gentleman's sweep. Is like 5 games, but like
you lose game 4.
The 5th game is like not really even that competitive. What do you call that same mentality, but when it's in 4 games? It's like they were all just blowouts. It's like the other team barely even showed up.
The gentleman's sweep is where you lose game 4 after being up 3-0 to like, you got a game, here you go.
Yeah, well, exactly. But like it felt the same way, but they didn't win at all. I don't know. It was more crushing than just a sweep, is what it felt like to me.
Thorough ass kicking. That's what it's called.
Yeah, okay, maybe that's fair.
Yeah, a gentleman sweep and a bastard sweep.
Yeah, that's probably.
Hey, you suck sweep, basically. Now, I don't know. Overall, I might have changed my tune. I think I might want Utah because I kind of like the fact the Clippers have never made the Western Conference Finals. Let's just keep it at that. We'll run with that.
Yeah.
Like I know Mitchell could go off. And probably will if he does advance and face us. Like he's really good, especially in the playoffs. I know Gobert is a threat to be reckoned with, but I feel like we can make him work and stretch him out a lot. There's no player left in the playoffs that scares me more than Kawhi Leonard except one, and that's Kevin Durant. That's it.
Yeah.
Not Giannis, especially the way our team can defend him and has over the last 2 seasons. It's those two, and I think Kawhi, more than anybody, can take over both ends of the floor. There's nobody like him that can do it that way. Even Durant, who can be very good defensively when he locks in, but he's carrying so much of the workload offensively right now that he can't do that on both ends. We saw that against Dallas in Game 5, and Game 6, and we saw that against Utah in Game 4, where Kawhi was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to be the best player on the floor for 40 minutes, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. So for me, between that and hating several of the Clippers, I'd rather just get them out of here now. And if Utah beats us, then I can at least be somewhat happy if they're in the finals. Because if the Clippers advance and then beat us, that's
That's a good point.
jump off a bridge time.
Yep.
Yeah, actually, that's a great way to look at it. Is who would I rather lose to? And I would rather lose to this Utah team, even though it's going to be super damaging for the Mitchell versus Booker debate. But you know, I think Booker has in many ways proven himself this postseason anyway, so I'm less worried about that.
I've seen random takes, and now these are just sometimes stupid people online, but I've seen too many of them saying like, oh yeah, Booker's only good because he has the Hall of Fame point guard. It's like, your entire argument was that he didn't have any players around him. Now he does, and you're going to discount that? Moving goalposts, people are stupid. I know I can't get mad about it.
Yeah,
but still.
like 99% of everyone is like, wow, we're finally getting to see how special Booker is.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes that's just look how he plays within the system.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even that he's putting him gaudy numbers or 47 in the elimination game with LA. It's just like he's just a team player who's really good. He commands all of the attention of the defense, and that opens up players, his teammates, and he's more than happy to dish to him.
Yeah, it's the fact that he can put up 47 in a clinching game if he needs to. He can. The best thing about our team that I've seen, at least through these series, is that in the first 3 quarters, the first half, Booker can just be like, all right, I'm getting my shots, like he did in the Lakers series, where it's like, look, we're going to get these, we're going to score, and we're going to get, he's going to get his shots off, and he's on fire. He's going to fire a lot. If he's not, then he'll pass around a little bit more. And then in the fourth quarter, it's like, okay, we need buckets. We need to make sure we get a bucket. Chris Paul gets them. Gets them.
Stabilizing.
The game. Yeah.
Chris Paul, every bucket, especially in this last game, he's been doing it all year, but it hit me like stabilizer is the, like, every time he goes in and they do a little bit of a run and he goes and he gets his little jump shot, that is a stabilizing bucket. Yep. And he carried us through a stretch when they were making a little bit of a run. And, man, that's valuable.
Yeah.
I want to throw out there again, I know we've kind of moved on past the Nuggets, but I just want to say, like, I remember all the takes of, like, Campazzo and Austin Rivers and Aaron Gordon, like, they had a solid series against Portland. I really think they're going to carry the load. And then when they didn't, everybody's like, well, what happened? Why do they suck? And it's like, I'll tell you what happened. It's our defense is what happened. Mm. And again, sometimes we don't get the credit. It's more about what the team did wrong than what we did right. But that is quickly turning. That is not the narrative as much, especially after this season. It's really starting to be Phoenix is one of the hottest teams. Someone said we're the hottest team in sports right now. Yeah. Which is pretty cool. And so we're finally getting the attention that we deserve, and it's pretty awesome.
And I will say our online presence has done that. Our fans, the fan environment in the arena has done that. You talked about having a new generation of sports fans. I have one of Courtney's friends who has never talked about basketball ever. I've never heard them once talk about it. They're like, yeah, we sprung and spent $400 a ticket for the first game of the Western Conference Finals. I'm like, can you name a player on the Suns? No, well, I'm glad you're excited, but holy shit, like, you spent $400 a ticket on this? What?
Yeah.
I mean, bandwagon fans get a bad name, but you actually need and want them. You just want to have a fan base that's also loyal and a decent-sized loyal fan base to boot. But having fans come and go with success is not unusual for any market of any size or any tradition. That's the way things work. The fact that we had such a huge turnout even before we started to see this success in the playoffs, from game one, and hell, even before the end of the regular season, the arena was rocking, even at not full capacity. Yep. So we knew the turnout was going to be big. The last thing I was going to say in regards to, like, the Jazz, I think Mitchell's going to keep getting his numbers, but it's because they're much more reliant on him, especially without Conley. Like, he has to shoot 30 times a night. The Suns found success against the Nuggets because Booker didn't. They had 4 players with 20-plus in game 1. They had 8 players with 8-plus in both games 2 and 3. A balanced attack that keeps the defense on their heels, that keeps anybody from having to shoulder too much of the workload. Booker starts hot. Paul finishes it off. It's a recipe for success. And yes, all 3 of us, if anybody who out there is listening or watching doesn't get this yet, are aware that we have not faced a team at full strength yet. Okay? I get that. And maybe there's a reckoning coming for that still. I also don't care. I mentioned this in the text thread that we run. I don't give a shit what gets us our title. I don't care if Donovan Mitchell advances to the next round and his legs fall off. I don't care if the Nets have 0, 1, 2 of their stars and they're missing somebody in the finals. Don't give a damn. by hook or by crook, I will take whatever title is necessary.
Yeah, I unless you're gonna go back and give the 2005 Suns a title because like Joe Johnson got hurt, and if you're gonna do that, then maybe I'll change my tune. But I don't think you're gonna do that. So yeah, I don't give a shit.
You're gonna give those 7 Suns the title that year because our guys got suspended for a bullshit reason.
Mm-hmm.
Nope,
Amare being hurt the entire 2006.
Did you know Kawhi Leonard doesn't have a title now because Kevin Durant was injured in 2019?
Mm-hmm.
So
and Klay Thompson.
Yeah, it's almost like it always plays a role.
There was a great article that somebody wrote that whenever it's posted online, someone just reads the title and never actually reads the article. But it's like, the most asterisks, an asterisk on a championship, and it literally goes through every champion up to the year it was written, which was like 2016, with some reason why there's an asterisk on the title.
Exactly.
And I was like, okay,
exactly. That's the nature of it. And and I'm gonna eat my words when we get like a devastating injury, but like staying injury free, there's a little bit of a talent to that. Like Chris Paul completely redid his diet and he takes care of himself. And you hear stories of Embiid, I think, was one of those. Jokic was one of those where really starting to hurt their career. And they're like, okay, I'm going to make a choice. And Embiid's unfortunately a bad example because he's hurt again. But like you saw the difference that it made when they're taking care of themselves. And it's amazing. You hear players where it's like, yeah, I used to eat pizza before every game. And it's like, oh my God, no wonder. So, it plays a factor. I'm going to be grateful that we haven't been injured yet, but I'm definitely not going to be like, oh, it's an asterisk or anything like that.
So 2 things about that you made me think of. One can you imagine those guys in the 80s, like the 70s and 80s that used to like smoke cigarettes at halftime and stuff like that? It's like, how did you not die on the court?
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
Well, and you know what else is crazy? Like Isaiah Thomas scoring 25 points in that game with a twisted ankle.
Yeah. Basically a torn ankle. Yeah.
And you're like, that would never, could not happen today because they're like, no, your career is more important than this game. But,
secondly, how awesome is that we have a core, I'd say a young core of Booker, Ayton, and Bridges. All of them are 25 and under. And they see someone like Chris Paul who dedicates his life to this, who is older than them, an elderly figure, and they see what it takes to play this long in this league. Ayton talked about wanting to get to his second contract. Well, he's going to get there, obviously. He's signing that extension sooner than later. But they see what it means to be a career NBA player and not just play in the league, if that makes sense.
Health is a skill.
Yeah, it is.
And somebody like LeBron has meticulously taken care of himself over his career, and it's paid dividends. And yes, he was hurt by a flukish accident, but the reason he's had such longevity is because he dedicated himself to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, Joel Embiid is playing with a torn meniscus, and it's clearly starting to hamper him, and who knows what that means if the Sixers even advance. It's all a big question mark right now, and there's a litany of injuries elsewhere. The only reason I would feel bad for any of them is if we did it. If Jay Crowder goes and fouls somebody with a flagrant foul and they get hurt because of it, that's one where I'd be like, yeah, we can't say a damn thing about that. That's on us. We did that. If these players keep getting hurt before we face them and they're not 100%, I don't give 2 shits. I don't. There will be no asterisk on our title. At the end of the day, we'll have our first one, and the NBA record books will be forced to put a 1 in that column. That's it. Would it be cool to beat all these teams at full strength and stomp them all and leave this impression on the league? Sure. But I don't care. I really don't.
Yeah.
Do you think Dallas cares that they got 1 title in 2011? I mean, they beat the Heat, but LeBron wasn't good. He didn't play well. They don't care one bit. Oh, you're the weakest champion of the decade. I don't give a shit.
They're fucking legends, dude.
One example of some people that call a weak champion, maybe. There's been years where this is a weak champion. I'm like, you're a champion. Don't give me that shit.
Yeah.
You won a title. That's all that matters.
Alrighty. Well, I don't know what next week holds. As we end this episode, I tried to advance the slide, but I was in the wrong window, so now I have to click over. It's fine. It's awkward. There you go.
There's a possibility that the Suns will still have not played a game up until the day we record next Tuesday.
Yep, and I'm not sure we're going to go through the trouble of breaking down a series as a preview, but we'll probably talk about it at least in one of the bullet points on the right-hand side. I don't know yet. It's open-ended. We haven't had a non-Suns focused show for a while. I know we've touched on E3 in both the last 2, but there's all sorts of things we haven't talked about in a bit that we might want to get to. I was hoping maybe we reviewed Ted Lasso, but when we tried to watch it in Phoenix, the streaming experience was miserable, so we haven't finished it yet. Maybe in July. Yeah.
Watch Invincible. We'll review that.
Yeah, so we'll have some other stuff to potentially get to, but I can't even tell you what it is yet. So tune in next week and we'll find out together. In between episodes, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com, or at youtube.com/objectionnetwork for new videos 7 days a week. We'll see you next time. Go Suns.